Gabriella stood at the security checkpoint with a cool confidence that belied the storm of emotions roiling inside her. In that split second, she witnessed a scene that would change her morning, and perhaps her life, forever. As she arranged her belongings for the routine screening at Los Angeles International Airport, she couldn't help but notice a TSA agent, his expression smug and self-assured, fixated on her. His eyes seemed to glimmer with a mix of entitlement and condescension as he watched her every move. Unbeknownst to him, however, there was much more at play than a simple security procedure. Gabriella's husband, Michael Jenkins, a man whose influence spanned half the airport and extended deep into the corridors of power, was never far from her side in spirit. Today, payback was inevitable. It was a typical bustling morning at LAX. The terminal was alive with the incessant hum of flight announcements and the hurried footsteps of countless passengers weaving through the maze of security lines. Crowds moved with a practiced urgency, their faces reflecting the anxiety and excitement of travel. Yet for Gabriella Jenkins, this morning was destined to be anything but ordinary. While the airport teemed with activity, all eyes seemed to be drawn to her. Dressed in an elegant, floor-length black gown that clung to every curve, she exuded an effortless grace, a style so distinctive that heads turned wherever she went. Her dress, delicate and expensive, was a statement of her refined taste and impeccable poise, qualities that set her apart from the everyday traveler. Gabrielle was well aware of the luxury that had long been a part of her life, a luxury she never felt the need to overtly flaunt. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet dignity that spoke volumes about her inner strength and self-respect. Yet, as she approached the TSA checkpoint that day, all of her usual composure was suddenly tested. Her eyes locked onto the face of the security agent, a middle-aged man of average height whose uniform seemed to strain at the shoulders as if it were a poor fit for someone who had been on duty for far too long. His gaze, heavy with unspoken judgment, was fixed upon her as she placed her belongings in the bin. The normal routine of security was about to be disrupted by an unsettling air of arrogance and authority. "Step aside, ma'am," the agent barked abruptly, his tone cold and overly formal. There was an edge to his words, a deliberate display of power that made Gabriella's skin prickle with discomfort. "We'll need to conduct a more thorough search. That dress of yours looks expensive." His statement was delivered with a sneer that left no room for debate. Gabriella, who had navigated TSA checks countless times before, raised an eyebrow in incredulity. She replied in a measured tone, "You're kidding, right? It's just a dress." Despite her calm exterior, an inner alarm warned her that something was very wrong. The manner in which he scrutinized her, as though she were nothing more than an object of curiosity, sent a chill down her spine. Without another word, the agent began rifling through her personal items, her purse, her handbag, and even the contents of her carry-on, treating each belonging as if it were an unimportant trifle. Gabriella stood her ground. She had weathered far worse indignities in her life. But before she could process what was happening, the agent's hand darted out and seized the hem of her exquisite dress. With a swift, deliberate motion, he yanked it upward. In that horrifying instant, the delicate fabric, silk that had once whispered elegance, tore apart under his grip. The sound of ripping silk echoed through the terminal, halting the bustle of the crowd. Gabriella's heart dropped as she gasped, "Hold up! What the hell?" The agent's response was a twisted grin and a dismissive, "Oops, guess your dress isn't as sturdy as it looks. Looks like it's not even worth that much, huh?" His words, cruel and callous, reverberated in the stunned silence that followed. The tear in her dress was not a mere flaw. It was a gaping wound along the side of the garment, rendering it a ruined spectacle. In that instant, the once admiring glances of fellow passengers turned into furtive murmurs and judging whispers. The crowd, which had once been preoccupied with their own hurried routines, now fixated on the unfolding drama. Gabriella's voice emerged low and sharp, laced with an anger that was slowly building inside her. "Are you serious?" she managed to choke out. The agent, however, remained unrepentant. With a nonchalant shrug, he muttered, "Hey, sometimes things get a little rough. It's not my fault your dress was fragile." There was no apology, no hint of remorse, only an air of detachment that made his actions all the more infuriating. The faces of onlookers ranged from pity to outright judgment. Some seemed sympathetic to her plight, while others appeared to relish the spectacle of her humiliation. Despite the painful exposure, Gabriella tried to maintain her composure, even as her inner resolve began to harden. This incident was no longer solely about a ruined dress. It had become a symbolic assault on her dignity and self-worth. As Gabriella grappled with the weight of the moment, a deeper injustice simmered beneath the surface. This was not the first time she had experienced discrimination. The echoes of past prejudices and the sting of racism had followed her through life like unwanted shadows. The agent's demeanor, his condescending tone, and his leering eyes spoke of a prejudiced mindset that reduced her to nothing more than a target for ridicule. With her blood now boiling, Gabriella's voice sharpened as she declared, "You're going to pay for that." It was a cold, measured threat, a promise of retribution that carried with it the weight of years of pent-up frustration. The agent's dismissive response only fueled her fury. "Sure, whatever," he muttered, as if the entire debacle were an insignificant inconvenience, a mere bureaucratic hassle. His words dripped with disdain, and he casually suggested that she file a complaint, remarking patronizingly, "Sweetheart, it's not like I'm the one going to be on the hook for a few $1,000. At that moment, Gabriella felt her blood pressure rising. She knew she would not stand idly by while her dignity was so blatantly trampled. Determination set in as the agent moved on to the next passenger without even a backward glance. In the midst of the chaos, Gabriella's trembling hand reached for her phone. With a mix of anger and disbelief, she dialed Michael's number. The phone rang, and when he answered, his voice came through sharp and concerned. "Michael, I need you here right now. Something terrible has happened," she pleaded. His tone shifted instantly, laced with protective intensity. "What's wrong, baby?" he asked, and she quickly relayed the events. The TSA agent's deliberate act of tearing her dress in front of everyone, and most damning of all, his mirthful reaction, as if it were a joke. Michael's response was swift and uncompromising. "Stay right there. I'm on my way," he said. His voice, both reassuring and vengeful, carried the promise of immediate action. For Gabriella, the surreal feeling of disbelief mingled with a rising tide of determination. She was no stranger to discrimination, having weathered many storms in her life, but today was about more than just race or prejudice. It was about reclaiming her dignity. As she stood amidst the wreckage of her once-y beautiful dress, a kind voice broke through the tension. A woman in her early 60s, dressed in a cozy cardigan and sensible shoes, stepped up beside her. With genuine concern in her eyes, she said softly, "Baby girl, I saw what happened. You didn't deserve that. You have every right to be mad, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The warmth in the older woman's smile, reminiscent of a long-lost grandmother, provided a small but significant spark of hope. "I've been through it too, sugar. Don't let these fools get to you. If you need a witness, I'm happy to speak up." "You're not alone in this," she added reassuringly. For the first time that morning, amid the humiliation and chaos, Gabriella felt a flicker of strength. The universe, it seemed, had a way of sending the right people into her path just when she needed them most. Her determination grew with every second that passed, and as Michael's voice crackled through the phone once more, that spark of hope transformed into a blazing flame of resolve. "This isn't over," Gabriella whispered to herself, her chin lifting imperiously. She began pacing near the security checkpoint, each step echoing the simmering anger that threatened to boil over. Yet beneath that anger lay a calm certainty. Michael was coming, and with him, the promise that no one would get away with undermining her worth. As she scanned the terminal, Gabriella replayed the agent's callous words in her mind. "It's not my fault your dress was fragile." The memory of that statement, so casually dismissive and full of contempt, stung like a fresh wound. It wasn't just the ruined fabric that cut deep. It was the implication that her value, her very essence, was something trivial, disposable. The judgmental stares from strangers, the silent condemnation of those around her, only served to reinforce the injustice of the situation. But Gabriella refused to be reduced to a mere victim of petty power plays. The agent had sized her up as if she were nothing more than a target, a token for his own amusement. She had seen that look before, the look of someone who considered themselves above others, and she was determined that he would not win. Just as Gabriella was about to call Michael again to demand further assistance, her phone buzzed with his message. She answered immediately. and Michael's voice, sharp yet laden with concern, came through. "Baby, where are you? I'm 5 minutes out, and I swear if I don't get to that airport soon, someone's going to regret it." His words, full of protective fury, filled Gabriella with renewed strength. "I'm right here at security," she replied breathlessly. "Just waiting." "Good," Michael responded. "Don't move. I'm coming in hot. I've got something to say to this punk who thinks he can mess with my wife." The fury in his tone was unmistakable, a promise of retribution that made it clear that disrespect toward Gabriella would not go unanswered. It was in that charged atmosphere that Michael finally arrived. In a matter of moments, he strode into the security area with an unmistakable presence. Clad in a sharply tailored suit and polished shoes, his every step resonated with authority. His jaw was set, and his eyes scanned the room with an intensity that left no room for argument. He was the embodiment of power and respect, the very image of a man who had risen to the top by demanding that everyone, without exception, recognize his authority. As soon as Gabriella's eyes caught sight of him, a wave of relief washed over her. She knew that Michael's intervention would not only restore her honor but also send a resounding message that injustice, in any form, was intolerable. Without hesitation, Michael made a beeline for the TSA supervisor stationed near the security desk. "Hey, you!" he barked, his voice booming throughout the crowded terminal. The supervisor, startled by his sudden arrival and commanding tone, turned to face him. Her eyes widened in recognition as she saw Michael, and then quickly darted to Gabriella, whose face was etched with distress. "Sir, I'm not exactly sure what the issue is," she stammered, attempting to regain control of the situation, but Michael cut her off with a steely glare that could chill fire. "Oh, you know exactly what the issue is, sweetheart. My wife just got treated like trash by one of your so-called agents. You can either handle this like a professional, or I'll make sure your entire department hears about it." His words were delivered with a force that left no room for negotiation. The supervisor's face paled, and it was clear that she understood exactly whom she was dealing with. Michael Jenkins was a name synonymous with power, a man who owned half the city and wielded influence that extended far beyond the confines of any terminal. Despite her attempts to smooth things over, the supervisor faltered. "Sir, I don't know what happened here," she stuttered, clearly unnerved by Michael's unyielding demeanor. "I'll look into this right away." But Michael was having none of it. "Look into it? No! We're beyond looking into it," he snapped. "Your agent ripped my wife's dress in front of everyone, and don't even try to tell me it was an accident. I saw the way he was eyeing her. It was deliberate." Even as Gabriella's heart pounded in her chest, she managed to steady her voice. She was not a damsel in distress, she was a woman who knew her worth. "This isn't just about the dress," she declared firmly. "It's about what he did to me, and to every woman who's ever been disrespected by someone like him. I'm not letting him get away with it." For a brief moment, Michael's expression softened. He understood perfectly that this was not merely about a ruined garment or an isolated act of misconduct. It was about dignity, about standing up against the forces that sought to reduce a person's value to nothing more than a disposable commodity. "Damn right," Michael agreed, his voice resolute. "If you want this to disappear, we do it my way. We're going to show everyone what happens when you cross the wrong person." He turned back to the TSA supervisor, his tone lowering to a threatening murmur that carried far enough for anyone nearby to hear. "I want that agent fired today. No questions, no delays, and I demand a public apology to my wife. I don't care if you have to call the media yourself. I'm not playing around." The supervisor's hands trembled visibly, but Michael was relentless. "While you're at it," he continued, "why don't you take a good look at your entire department? There's no room for people like him in a professional environment. This is 2024, not some relic from the 1950s. Gabriella watched as the scene rapidly escalated into a full-blown spectacle. The TSA agent, who had once tried to slink away unnoticed, suddenly found himself at the center of a storm of anger and retribution. Despite the humiliation of the moment, Gabriella felt a rising sense of pride. Pride in Michael's fierce protection, and pride in her own unyielding spirit. Even as the chaos swirled around her, she realized that this confrontation was about more than just a dress. It was a declaration, a statement that respect must be earned, and that no one would be allowed to demean her without consequences. Within minutes, an airport spokesperson arrived to try to restore order. speaking in hushed tones that barely managed to mask the palpable tension in the air. Michael, however, showed no signs of backing down. Standing resolute, he made sure that every person in the terminal understood that this incident would not simply be swept under the rug. As the TSA agent was escorted away, his head bowed in shame and disbelief, Gabriella met Michael's gaze. In that silent exchange, they communicated more than words ever could. A nod, a subtle smile, and a shared determination that this was only the beginning. Even as the press began to swarm the area, Michael's focus remained unwavering. "I want that man gone," he stated firmly, his voice echoing off the tiled floors. "And I want the world to know exactly why." Gabriella stepped forward, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "You better believe it." "Don't you dare think this will be forgotten. It's not just about address, it's about respect." Michael squeezed her hand, a quiet reassurance in his grip. "Don't worry, baby," he murmured softly. "This won't be the last they hear of it." In the aftermath of the confrontation, the fallout was swift and decisive. The agent was fired on the same day, and the story quickly exploded across local and national media. Michael made sure that every detail was publicized, ensuring that no one would ever forget the injustice that had been inflicted upon Gabriella. As they walked out of the terminal, Gabriella's once ruined dress now symbolized not only the pain of the moment, but also the spark of defiance that had been ignited. She was no longer merely the woman in the torn dress. She was someone who demanded to be treated with respect and dignity, a woman who would not be cowed by petty acts of cruelty. Michael leaned in close and whispered, "I've always got you, baby." His words, gentle yet imbued with strength, reaffirmed the bond they shared. Together they stepped into the bright light of the terminal, their backs straight and their eyes fixed on a future where no one would dare to diminish their worth. The message they sent that day was clear. Disrespect and injustice had no place in their world, and they were prepared to fight for every ounce of dignity they deserved. In the days that followed, the incident at LAX became a rallying cry for many. Gabriella's experience was recounted in news stories, on social media, and in hushed conversations among those who had long suffered in silence. Her story, though born from a moment of deep humiliation, soon transformed into a symbol of empowerment. People marveled at her poise, her courage, and the way she had stood up not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been marginalized or disrespected. The narrative of that fateful morning resonated far and wide, sparking conversations about the importance of dignity, the need for accountability, and the undeniable power of standing up against injustice. In time, Gabriella reflected on that day as a turning point. Though the pain of humiliation had been acute, it had also served as a catalyst for change. She realized that while the memory of the torn dress would forever remind her of that moment of degradation, it would also forever symbolize her resilience and the unyielding strength of her character. Michael's intervention had not only righted an immediate wrong, it had set in motion a series of events that would challenge outdated attitudes and demand that respect be restored to every individual, regardless of their background. As the weeks turned into months, Gabriella's story became more than just a headline. It evolved into a movement, a call for accountability, and a refusal to accept any form of degradation. In interviews and public appearances, she spoke with measured passion about the importance of self-worth and the need for systemic change. "I refuse to let anyone treat me or any other woman as if we are less than we are," she declared, her voice steady and resolute. Her words resonated with countless others who had experienced similar indignities, inspiring them to speak out and demand change. Michael, ever the stalwart partner, remained by her side through every step of the journey. His reputation as a powerful businessman only grew, now coupled with a public image of a man who defended not only his own honor, but also the dignity of those he loved. His actions had demonstrated that true power was not measured by wealth alone, but by the ability to stand up for what was right, even when it meant challenging the established order. The once quiet corridors of LAX now whispered a new narrative, that respect was a right, not a privilege, and that those who attempted to diminish others would soon face the full force of accountability. On that busy morning at LAX, as the echoes of the agent's careless cruelty faded into memory, a new chapter had begun, a chapter marked by resilience, unity, and the unbreakable spirit of a woman who refused to be diminished. Gabriella's torn dress, now forever altered, stood as a testament to the fact that even in our most vulnerable moments, we have the power to reclaim our dignity. And with Michael at her side, she knew that together they could transform any injustice into a call for change, a call that would resonate far beyond the walls of an airport terminal. In the end, the story of that morning was not solely about a piece of fabric or a momentary lapse in protocol. It was about the relentless pursuit of respect, the courage to stand up against tyranny, and the unwavering determination to ensure that no one would ever dare to treat another human being as less than they were. Gabriella's experience became a symbol, a rallying cry for those who believed in fairness, equality, and the fundamental right to be treated with decency and compassion. And so, as the terminal lights dimmed for the night and the last echoes of the day's commotion faded away, Gabriella and Michael walked out together into the cool, determined night. Their footsteps, now in perfect harmony, carried with them the promise of a future where every act of disrespect would be met with unyielding resolve. Their journey had just begun, and the lessons of that fateful morning would forever serve as a reminder that dignity, once challenged, could never be reclaimed by those who sought to tear it asunder. Thus, the tale of Gabriella at LAX lives on, a narrative of humiliation transformed into empowerment, of pain transmuted into purpose. It is a story that continues to inspire, a story that calls upon all who hear it to stand tall, speak out, and never let anyone diminish the light that burns within. For in that resolute spirit we find not only the courage to face the present, but the strength to shape a future where respect and dignity prevail over all. Gabriella's experience at LAX ultimately transformed a painful moment of humiliation into a profound lesson in personal dignity and social empowerment. What began as a single incident of disrespect by an overconfident TSA agent evolved into a catalyst for change, a reminder that no one should ever be made to feel less than their true worth. Gabriella's ordeal, marked by the tearing of her elegant dress and the blatant disregard for her inherent value, resonated far beyond the confines of that busy airport terminal. It became a symbol of the everyday injustices many face and a call to action against those who would devalue others based on appearance, race, or social standing. Her unwavering courage in the face of injustice, and Michael's equally resolute support, illustrated a powerful truth that dignity is a right, not a privilege. When confronted with dehumanizing treatment, Gabriella chose not to shrink into silence. Instead, she stood tall and voiced her anger and discontent, reinforcing that every act of humiliation carries with it the potential for growth and change. Through this experience, she not only reclaimed her personal dignity, but also ignited a broader conversation about respect, accountability, and equality. The lesson here is multifaceted. Firstly, it reminds us that personal resilience is crucial. In moments when one feels most vulnerable, the strength to speak out and seek justice can transform an isolated incident into a movement for systemic change. Secondly, it underscores the importance of support systems, whether through loved ones like Michael or compassionate strangers who step forward to offer encouragement. These relationships reinforce the notion that no one should ever face discrimination or injustice alone. Ultimately, Gabriella's story teaches that every setback, no matter how humiliating or painful, carries within it the seed of empowerment. By standing up against the abuse of power, she not only asserted her right to be treated with respect, but also paved the way for others to do the same. In her journey, we see the enduring power of self-respect, community solidarity, and the unwavering belief that dignity can and must prevail, even in the face of systemic injustice. Gabriella stood her ground. She had weathered far worse indignities in her life. But before she could process what was happening, the agent's hand darted out and seized the hem of her exquisite dress. With a swift, deliberate motion, he yanked it upward. In that horrifying instant, the delicate fabric, silk that had once whispered elegance, tore apart under his grip. The sound of ripping silk echoed through the terminal, halting the bustle of the crowd. Gabriella's heart dropped as she gasped, "Hold up! What the hell?" The agent's response was a twisted grin and a dismissive, "Oops, guess your dress isn't as sturdy as it looks. Looks like it's not even worth that much, huh?" His words, cruel and callous, reverberated in the stunned silence that followed. The tear in her dress was not a mere flaw. It was a gaping wound along the side of the garment, rendering it a ruined spectacle. In that instant, The once admiring glances of fellow passengers turned into furtive murmurs and judging whispers. The crowd, which had once been preoccupied with their own hurried routines, now fixated on the unfolding drama. Gabriella's voice emerged low and sharp, laced with an anger that was slowly building inside her. "Are you serious?" she managed to choke out. The agent, however, remained unrepentant. With a nonchalant shrug, he muttered, "Hey, sometimes things get a little rough. It's not my fault your dress was fragile." There was no apology, no hint of remorse, only an air of detachment that made his actions all the more infuriating. The faces of onlookers ranged from pity to outright judgment. Some seemed sympathetic to her plight, while others appeared to relish the spectacle of her humiliation. Despite the painful exposure, Gabriella tried to maintain her composure, even as her inner resolve began to harden. This incident was no longer solely about a ruined dress. It had become a symbolic assault on her dignity and self-worth. As Gabriella grappled with the weight of the moment, a deeper injustice simmered beneath the surface. This was not the first time she had experienced discrimination. The echoes of past prejudices and the sting of racism had followed her through life like unwanted shadows. The agent's demeanor, his condescending tone, and his leering eyes spoke of a prejudiced mindset that reduced her to nothing more than a target for ridicule. With her blood now boiling, Gabriella's voice sharpened as she declared, "You're going to pay for that." It was a cold, measured threat, a promise of retribution that carried with it the weight of years of pent-up frustration. The agent's dismissive response only fueled her fury. "Sure, whatever," he muttered, as if the entire debacle were an insignificant inconvenience, a mere bureaucratic hassle. His words dripped with disdain, and he casually suggested that she file a complaint, remarking patronizingly, "Sweetheart, it's not like I'm the one going to be on the hook for a few $1,000. At that moment, Gabriella felt her blood pressure rising. She knew she would not stand idly by while her dignity was so blatantly trampled. Determination set in as the agent moved on to the next passenger without even a backward glance. In the midst of the chaos, Gabriella's trembling hand reached for her phone. With a mix of anger and disbelief, she dialed Michael's number. The phone rang, and when he answered, his voice came through sharp and concerned. "Michael, I need you here right now. Something terrible has happened," she pleaded. His tone shifted instantly, laced with protective intensity. "What's wrong, baby?" he asked, and she quickly relayed the events. The TSA agent's deliberate act of tearing her dress in front of everyone, and most damning of all, his mirthful reaction, as if it were a joke. Michael's response was swift and uncompromising. "Stay right there. I'm on my way," he said. His voice, both reassuring and vengeful, carried the promise of immediate action. For Gabriella, the surreal feeling of disbelief mingled with a rising tide of determination. She was no stranger to discrimination, having weathered many storms in her life, but today was about more than just race or prejudice. It was about reclaiming her dignity. As she stood amidst the wreckage of her once-so beautiful dress, a kind voice broke through the tension. A woman in her early 60s, dressed in a cozy cardigan and sensible shoes, stepped up beside her. With genuine concern in her eyes, she said softly, "Baby girl, I saw what happened.